Hello everyone, Mr. Tanner again, and this time we're going to be looking at types of economic systems, and then also specifically what type of economic system exists in Canada. Again, it's always good to start with some definitions. So first, what is an economy? Well, an economy is a system in which goods and services are produced from limited resources and then sold. A good is anything that is manufactured or made. So this could be like a computer that you're viewing this video on right now, or a phone, or a desk, or a pencil, right? A good is anything that could be manufactured or made, and a service is something a person provides for you. So this could be like getting your hair cut, right? You're not purchasing a product when you get your hair cut. You're just having something done for you. So getting your hair cut is a service. Someone mowing your lawn is a service. So an economy is a system in which goods and services are produced from limited resources and sold. And there's some fundamental truths that always come into play with an economy. And the first is that all resources on Earth are limited. So Earth has a finite amount of mass, it has a finite amount of things on it, which means I can't produce unlimited things. If I want to make a computer, for example, so to make a computer, I would need metals, right? I need metals to make the silicone chips. I need metals to make some of the frames if they're made out of aluminum, metals for the circuitry, like copper wires. Uh, all those are resources that you would need. I would need petroleum, which is actually what oil is derived from, but we also use it to make a lot of our plastics. And most computers have like plastic keys or, plastic frames, some of them, plastic parts. So all these materials you need, and since those materials are limited, I can only make a limited amount of any good, any product. The second truth is that all resources cost money to obtain. I can't get anything for free. If I don't own the mine and I'm mining metal ores, I have to pay for those metal ores to use to make a computer. If I do own the mine, I had to buy the mine, and also I need to probably pay employees in order to dig those up. And even if I'm digging them up myself, that's still a cost in terms of a time investment. So all resources on Earth cost money to obtain, which means that if I want to make a computer, that costs me money. And then lastly, that means if I want to make money, I will sell my product for more than it costs me to make. And typically you want to sell it for quite a bit more because you want to be able to make a good amount of money. So if it costs me, let's say $400 to make a computer by the time I buy all the parts, uh, pay the employees who put it together. If it costs me $400 to make a computer, I'm not going to sell that computer for $400. I won't make any money. I might sell that computer for $700 or $800 so that I can make $300 per computer and grow my business. So these are the three truths again. All resources on Earth are limited. All resources on Earth cost money to obtain. And if I want to make money, I will sell my product for more than it costs me to make. So now with those definitions and some of those truths about an economy in hand, let's look at different types of economic systems that countries have used throughout history and also currently today. The first type of economy that we're going to look at is called a free market economy. It's also known as capitalism. And a free market economy is based on supply and demand. And what this means is if there's lots of demand for a product, so if there's lots of demand, it will cost more. Right? And this makes sense. If 10 million people across the world all want to buy the brand new iPhone, Apple can charge more for it because people will be willing to pay more for something that's in high demand. if there is, so ditto marks, if there is no or low demand, it will cost less, right? If people don't really want the brand new iPhone and it's not selling, Apple might need to lower the price so that more people are going to be willing to buy it. So again, what you're seeing is people ultimately decide how much something can be charged based on whether they're willing or not to buy it. And then the supply part, so that's the demand. Supply is how much of it there is. So if I have very low supplies, I'm probably going to charge more. So low supply equals increased cost because I need to be able to make more money per unit to make money. And low supplies typically means I need to pay more money for those resources as well. High numbers of supplies means you can lower cost. So it's this balance of the supplies and the demand that determine how much something costs in a market economy. So it's really the people, right? So if someone tells you that Apple charges too much for an iPhone because they charge $1,200, that might seem too much for you, but for a lot of people, that's not too much, or else Apple wouldn't charge that much. Right? If no one was buying an iPhone for $1,200, Apple wouldn't charge $1,200. They wouldn't charge a value that no one is willing to pay. So it's people who decide the price. And then competition with other companies drives down prices and helps increase innovation. So if there's two very similar phones on the market and ultimately they do all the same tasks, one is $1,000 and one is $400, most people will buy the cheaper option. So competition drives down prices. Um, and then it also causes to innovate because if multiple people are trying to create the same product, it's going to help people purchase your product if you can do something new that other phones can't do, or other products can't do. So in terms of innovation, I think a huge one right now is Apple versus Google in terms of smartphones. Right, these are companies that are competing, and it drives new technologies and new innovation um, to try and encourage people to buy one product over the other. We see this a lot with any industry, right? If we look at gasoline prices, if there's a Shell station on one side of the road and a Diamond Shamrock on the other, and gas is $2.20 per gallon at one and $2.50 per gallon at another, no one's going to go to the $2.50 per gallon. They're going to go to the cheaper one. So this is another example of competition driving down prices. When there's no competition and there's only one company that has something, we call that a monopoly. So with no competition, that equals a monopoly. And if monopoly forms, the free market economy no longer functions. So what you'll see is governments shut down monopolies. So government might shut down a true monopoly to protect the supply and demand. Because if there's only one company, let's say one company manufactured smartphones and there was no other company in the world that made them, people need smartphones at this point in the world, so that company could charge whatever amount they wanted and people would be forced to pay for it. So in that case, the government might split that company into two separate companies or maybe even three separate companies that all need to compete against each other to bring that competition back. And then in a free market economy, what is produced and how much they are sold for is based on consumer demand. We talked about this up here with the supply and demand system as well. Uh, but it's ultimately up to consumers. If something is too expensive for consumers, they won't buy it, right? It's reactionary is what we say. So a company might set a price initially, and if it sells really well, they'll keep that price or maybe even try and raise it a little bit. If it's not selling at all, they'll maybe lower the price to within reason and see if they can encourage more people to buy it. And in this system, there's little to no government intervention. So we talked about some situations like with a monopoly where there would be government intervention, but for the most part, the government is not needed for a free market economy to function well. The next type of economy is called a command or planned economy. It's also known as communism or socialism. And this is sort of a polar opposite to a free market economy. So this is no longer based on supply and demand. It's not reactionary to consumers. A government sets the prices and determines what will be produced. So in a command economy, the government really has complete control over what's produced, how much it's sold for, how much of something a company can make. And then because of that, people under command markets are also not based on their value, but instead usually paid for a fixed rate. And this sounds very fair. So the idea is that this is fair, but it makes it very difficult to get the most talented employees. So if there's a really hard job to do that's really difficult, takes a lot of skill, in a free market system, you would pay that person a lot of money to encourage them to do that hard task that might not be very enjoyable. In a command system, they would get the same rate as what most other people get paid, regardless of their skill level or the job difficulty. And it kind of disincentivizes people from doing the most difficult tasks. So that can happen. It doesn't always happen, but that's an idea. And because of some of these systems where price is not reactionary, so the government might set too high of a price, um, or limit products that people really need or want more of. Uh, in the past, countries who've used this system have often fallen into severe financial ruin, to the brink of almost destroying their entire country because their economies have collapsed. So command economies have not worked well in the past. Examples of this are Soviet Russia, um, Cuba, modern day Venezuela. All of these countries switched to a command economy, and their economies and the kind of wealth of their nations just completely evaporated. Next is a mixed economy. And just like this sounds, it would take parts of command where there's some government intervention and parts of a market system where there is no government intervention, and those mixed together. This is actually pretty common. I think you could argue most countries have a mixed economy because most countries have some level of government intervention or some businesses that the government own and run. So this is mostly based on supply and demand. The government might own some businesses and provide some services, but most companies are run by private citizens. This has a limited to moderate amount of government intervention. So I would argue this is what the USA is. We're a market to mixed economy. If you look at this reasonably, like the United States Postal Service, the USPS, that is owned and operated by the government. Public education is owned and operated by state governments, and then those are overseen by the federal government. So there's definitely a lot of businesses that are owned by the government in the United States, and they do involve themselves in some ways in businesses, like you need licenses to sell certain things, you need government approval for some things, but for the most part, we're a pretty market economy where people can produce what they want, choose how much of it they're going to make, choose what they sell it for. So mixed economies are more similar to market economies than command economies. Canada would fall into this category as well. However, based on recent lookings at what they call economic freedom rankings, there's a site called Heritage Economic Freedoms. Canada is actually more of a market economy than the United States is. So Canada has more freedom in their economic systems than the United States does. Um, so Canada is definitely a market economy. Uh, the USA is a market economy, but slightly more mixed than Canada would be. And then that brings us to one last type of economic system. And this is a socialism market economy, and it's what takes place in China right now. They're pretty rare. They don't pop up all that often. Um, and it's unique. In this type of system, the government actually owns many or most of the businesses and would have strict control over them. So if the government wanted to, they could absolutely set the price of products or determine what they're sold. So I will say they could set prices, um, but they choose not to. So even though the government controls and owns all of the businesses, they still let those businesses operate under supply and demand. So the government really, might own all of the businesses, but then they let the pricing part of it operate as supply and demand. So if the citizens in China aren't paying for something, the price is flexible and the price will adapt, or how much of something they'll make will adapt based on demand. So China is what's called a socialism market. And the socialism part is the fact that the government owns most of the businesses, but the market part is that it still operates under the supply and demand system. All right. If you have any questions about those different economic systems or anything about where we might find them in the world, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask. I know this is a longer set of notes, so thanks for hanging in there.